Duncan Crawford reporting from Lesbos there. Well, to discuss what 2016 holds for the refugees arriving in Lesbos, let's speak now to Alan Mendoza, founder of the Henry Jackson Society, who joins us from London. Thanks a lot for joining us, Alan. I went to your website, the Henry Jackson Society, under the migration section. The last article, the last headline on the site was "Mass immigration will destroy Britain if we don't act now." Now, many of these people are braving the elements, fleeing war zones, fleeing persecution. A lot of people see their arrival in Europe as a blessing and helping them as a blessing. Why do you see them as a burden?
I don't see them as a burden. I think you're confusing immigrants and refugees, or migrants in this context and refugees. People who come for economic purposes versus people who come for political asylum purposes. Now, neither need to be a burden in any case. I think the point of that article was simply to suggest that the sheer volume of numbers, if people are not integrated properly, will cause severe problems for European societies. Now, that doesn't mean they can't be integrated properly. Every previous wave of immigration in Europe has indeed been handled very well. But at the same time, we have to be cognizant of the fact that there is a dangerous time, and we need to be able to integrate new arrivals properly so that they can play a role and a part in the societies they come into.
Okay, so let's go back to basics. Our team was on the island of Lesbos this weekend. Now, they met people from Syria, Afghanistan, Sudan, Iran, Morocco, Libya. Which one of those countries would you say is a country that somebody's fleeing from that is worthy of being called a refugee, and who's a migrant?
Well, I think it very much depends on the individual circumstance you're facing. One country there, Morocco, is clearly a more stable country than the others, but maybe there are individuals there who are fleeing particular persecution. It may be in other cases that, although, for example, we know that Syria is indeed a terrible war zone with an awful conflict that has gone on for far too long, and which it's shameful that has not been resolved, there are people there who may actually be migrants and not refugees. So it's almost impossible to codify on the basis of a country purpose. You can, of course, look at conflict zones. You can go and say that this country is more likely to be a refugee sort of sender than another country, but it all depends on individuals, and that's why each person's sort of personal story has to be taken into account.
So who gets to decide?
Well, obviously, it's people who are checking those who are coming into Europe. So there has to be a checking process. Borders can't be simply open for one and all to come in just because they feel like it. There needs to be a genuine process whereby if refugee status is claimed, it's obviously checked, corroborated. Then people are given asylum for that purpose, and if indeed it is economic migration people are coming from, or for rather, then they need to be able to obviously apply and meet the criteria that each country sets for allowing in economic migrants.
Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, has taken in hundreds of thousands of refugees. She's willing to take in many more and successfully integrate them in German society. Do you believe that she's on the right track, or has she got it wrong?
Well, time will tell on that. So the key part to that is the latter, successfully integrate them into German society. Now, I do think the Germans have done one very different and interesting thing to most other European countries. When immigrants arrive in Germany, whether they're migrants or refugees, they aren't put in one place where they can congregate and sort of ghettoize, as we've seen in some parts of Brussels, for example, like Molenbeek in Brussels, some parts of Paris. Instead, what the Germans do is distribute immigrants around the country. Now, that makes, firstly, immigrants much more immediately made more welcome by a lot more people, number one. Number two, it gives immigrants a chance to meet more people, and it crucially as well, encourages them to get involved in local civic life as opposed to recreating perhaps an old-style existence in a new country. So I do think this has great advantages in Germany, but the jury is still out. I mean, this is a huge immigration into Germany. We're talking 1 million last year. Whether that's really going to be sustainable will very much depend on how successful the German state is at actually managing to integrate those people coming in.
Alan Mendoza, good to talk to you.